Very exciting news to share with you guys today from Trevor, who is a Sync Academy pro and also a very active part of the syndicate with his company Get It Done Music. And Trevor is going to actually reveal what his big news is. I'm going to let him do that. And the point of this video is to let you guys know, all the producers and songwriters and musicians out there, you need to really know how much work it takes to run a library and to get distribution deals in place with libraries. Because I know a lot of producers just want to go directly to clients and directly to TV shows and ad agencies. And I wish you all the best if that's what you think you want to do. But you're going to learn really quickly at the end of this video, by the end of this video, why libraries are really worth their weight in gold and why I have just constantly worked with them and why they've been my only path towards making full-time income with my music is because they, like Trevor, people like Trevor, are doing a lot of the work that you and I probably just don't want to do. And we're going to basically dive into that with this conversation. So Trevor, welcome, and let us know, man, what is the big news you got for us?
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. So my company just recently signed a global distribution deal with Sony BMG production music. So our catalog is now in the hands and distributed all over the world by one of the biggest music library distributors in the world. They've got offices in Australia, in Hong Kong, in Canada. I think they're opening a Canadian office. The U.S., the U.K., like they're global, literally. So it's been in the works for a while, but yeah, now our entire catalog, I think it originally was 75 albums that we delivered right away, and we're already at 85. We're just gonna keep pumping music into that, but yeah, this is kind of one of those big steps into getting the library out to as many potential clients and all over the world as possible. So yeah, it's a pretty big and cool deal for GID.
Awesome. Now, I remember when you first started GID, very humble beginnings, right? To say the least. No composers really, no music, very limited budget, just trying to basically kind of on a shoestring thing, sort of put this whole company together. And I remember it was a rough start. I mean, you had a lot of fire in your belly. You had a lot of, great goals and lofty goals, but it was definitely tough. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on why did you start GID? Where did it come from? And what were you doing in your career before this came about?
Yeah, the fire in the belly thing was about all I had at that at that time. There was when we started, I think we started like about a year or 2.5 years ago now, and even then it wasn't really a library at first, but yeah, it started as basically me as somebody who came from the library world, and then being working for a couple different music libraries, kind of shifting into like, well, what do I want to eventually do? I don't want to, work for libraries, like directly for libraries, not even as a composer, but, doing metadata, like all that fun stuff the rest of my life. So I kind of stepped away from all that. I was like, what am I going to do? And then a friend of mine who was an actor in TV in movies and films and stuff like that. It's like, hey, let's do a music company together. And we kind of put it together with this idea of creating music for, like for advertising, for maybe indie artists. He has some artist friends that are, like major artists and stuff like that. And all around, we were just kind of like, let's just provide music for people, and at first it was me as a composer, him as a vocalist, and a few other people that we were kind of trying to scrounge together around the internet. And then like we got jobs, right? We got projects, and we needed to deliver all this music. And so it was like, oh, they need 80s pop, or they need, underground hip hop here or whatever. And so we just started making a ton of music. And while yes, the doing some custom work here and some, pitching to random movies there was pretty cool. We started collecting a ton of music, and I was like, I know I come from the library world, so I'm gonna have to dip my toes back into it if we want to actually do something with all of this extra music, because we would do like 10, 15 tracks for something, but one would place. So then we'd have all this extra music. So it kind of evolved from let's just do stuff for the sake of doing it, working with rappers and singers and doing all that and working with maybe advertising agencies or directly to TV shows, to taking a whole collection of music and being like, all right, let's do the library thing. It's something I know really well. I come from that background. So let's lean into it. So I started, collecting it all together, creating albums, and really kind of defining GID as a library, as well as a custom like house or whatever you want to call it. And And so then it evolved, in the first couple of months, or whatever, it went from just some guys working on music to, okay, now we're like a library company and we start to look like a library company. And now we need to get library type clients. And so it evolved into what it probably ultimately would have evolved, just because of the background I come in. I knew library well. So then from basically nothing, because I was, just started out just making music, and then shifting into actually building a company and collecting music and all that kind of stuff. Then it became okay, now I have a ton of music. What am I going to do with it all? And yeah, and that's where, the next steps kind of happened of, marketing, getting potential clients, making deals, sub-publishing deals, which I think we've talked about on a few podcasts now, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so the beginning was definitely me just kind of with nothing, but like you said, the fire in the belly, and just making it work, or just getting it done, as we'd like to say.
Absolutely. So speaking of all of that, that sounds like a lot of work. And I really want you to talk about like how much time that takes to do all those things, because I think so many producers want to do everything themselves, right? They want to become their own library. They want to distribute their own music, which I think is very ambitious and really cool. So maybe let us know, how many hours a week is it taking for you to basically do everything that you just described? Gathering the tracks. I know you mixed and mastered pretty much all of them. You did the metadata. You obviously created your catalog, your online portfolio. You're doing a lot of flying around, going to conferences, wining and dining, trying to get your foot into the door of many different circles and that kind of thing. So is this something that you think, like if you were right now, well, I guess I should ask you this. How much time have you devoted to actually making music since you've launched GID? That would be a good question.
Well, since we became like a library type thing, like hardly any. It actually doesn't make sense, like, because I put myself in a scenario where I'm taking in a bunch of other people's music. It wouldn't be fair for me to sit and also make my own, instead of work on, placing and getting their music elsewhere. So I kind of evolved into I really enjoy the business aspect. I really enjoy building a business and building, like succeeding and failing and doing all of this stuff. I really enjoy it, and I kind of faded away from the music. And so, at least from the creating the music, I've probably listened to more music I've ever listened to, but in my entire life. But creating it, I kind of faded away. So I haven't really created much music in the last 2 years, like at all. Maybe a few things here and there on like some necessity situation, but yeah, so I don't really do music that much anymore, but that means my time is now dedicated to all of the things that you said. For the first 2 years, it was just me really doing the data, the mixing and the mastering, and the problem solving, and the finding people, and like editing things, like, oh, you can't say that bad word, so we got to re-record. Like going through all of that stuff, and then also that's just on the music side. Then on the client side, like you said, which isn't much right now because of COVID, but going to LA and having the whining and dining stuff, and talking to people and emailing and having tactics, and all that kind of stuff of like who to contact, how and why, and having your presentation look good. I've been through so many. At the very beginning, I went through really, really bad uh, cover art, because I was doing it and I don't know much about Photoshop. So I was just kind of throwing stuff together, and then slowly realizing that like presentation is very important. Like there's just all of these things that was just ate up so much of my time. Lots of late nights, early mornings kind of stuff, because it's not for everybody, but everybody could do it if they are that type of person, right? I realized, I was looking back on all this a while ago, as the when I started, like I didn't have much, and like as far as what like the content and the music and all that kind of stuff, and I just kind of figured it out as I went, knowing that eventually I wanted to get to a certain point. And knowing that it's only been 2.5 years, knowing that really makes me feel like, whatever it is that somebody wants to do, whether it's, be your own library, like you said, or pitch your own music, or be a band that pitches, like whatever it is that you want to do, like you gotta add that work ethic part. And that's the part that I think is why, I am where we've landed this BMG deal, is because I basically was that kind of minded person. I was like, well, I have to give up making music in order to make this other thing happen. And I can do that because I wanted to. Some people just can't. That's cool. Understand that about yourself and know what you want to do. But in this scenario, I had the goal and I knew how to get there, or at least I had a pretty good understanding of how to get there. And and yeah, and so that that process, me getting rid of some things in my career and my life to then focus on this, allowed me to spend late nights doing data, spend late nights researching and contacting clients and mixing and mastering and all that kind of stuff. So so yeah, man, it's a lot of behind the scene work for sure to run a library.
Yeah, and you guys don't know that Trevor basically sleeps like a vampire. Like he take a couple of naps a day. He doesn't sleep like regular human beings. He'll talk about that in a little bit, but he has definitely rearranged his entire life, his sleep schedule even, to be able to make this thing work for him. Because he's a family man too. He's got a family. He's got other obligations and other things he's got to do. So, but he's absolutely right about that. The work ethic, the having the long-term vision, and then obviously just taking failure off the table. With obstacle after obstacle, I'm sure there was always that sort of like, well, is this going to work out? Is this not going to work out? But every single time that fork in the road came for him, and he just chose, let's just get to work, right? And that's same with me. Every time I got those royalty checks that just sucked and they're really disappointing, it's a fork in the road. It's like you can give up. It's always a choice. You can always walk away. But am I really in this for the long run, or was I in this just for a couple of months that I got started in it, right? So it's absolutely, that work ethic and that long-term vision, man, it's totally important. So maybe you can talk about, like, I know this BMG deal actually got solidified during COVID, which is obviously proving the fact that some people are still saying, I don't know if there's any deals going on during COVID. Well, here's another example of how this is a huge distribution deal that did get signed. It obviously got delayed through, I think, the COVID process, but it did go through while everybody was basically in lockdown. So maybe, Trevor, you can talk to us about how this deal came about and why this is really going to benefit your composers more than anything else in the equation here.
Yeah, so I went out to March, I think in March, early March, something like that. I went out to LA to have a meeting with somebody from BMG, had some drinks, talked about the library, all that fun stuff. Really, feel like I did a good job pitching it, right? So it was fun. Drove back home, and right after, probably right when I got home, is when the world kind of was like, we're all on lockdown. And then the rest of summer of COVID or whatever you want to call it, I was standing right here trying to make this deal. And from basically beginning to end, I was standing right here, having emails and a couple of Zoom calls with a few of the different locations, just trying to basically sell GID to BMG, and not sell in the financial, here, buy it sense, but sell as in the personal, like, you guys want to bring me on kind of sense. And, and it essentially was me, doing showing all of the work that I did in the past without saying, hey, look, this is all of the work I did in the past. Because it's like, man, I stayed up late, please take in my catalog. That doesn't really relate well, right? But coming and saying, look, all of the covers have been redone to make it to be more visual appealing to your clients. All of the data makes a lot more sense, and I've adjusted it to make it make more sense for the type of clients you have. All of these cut down, like approaching in this, like, look what I have to offer you, which is essentially me showing off all the work I've been doing. Like, look what I have to offer you and your potential clients as a library. And then doing that for a while they, as a company, were trying to figure out how they were going to run as a company in COVID, because everybody was doing it at this time. So, going through those motions and back and forth, while at the same time, keeping everything up, kind of, just trying to impress them during a time where everybody's unsure of everything. And, lots of other libraries are like shutting down, and other libraries don't know what's going on. And everybody's just kind of all over the place, kind of just being around and being like, hey, we're all in this together kind of thing going on. I think really helped solidify the deal in a way. And plus, I mean, as you may know, and a lot of the listeners who may even have music in the catalog stuff know, it's pretty good music too. So yeah, so that's essentially how it was landed, is just me kind of proving it to them that it's a good company, and that has good music, good visuals, good, good presentation, good data, good all that stuff.
I love that too, because it is frustrating when you go to somebody and say, man, like, as you want to say exactly, I've stayed up, I've lost sleep, like, I've sacrificed, and look at all this great stuff I have. But you have to we all realize that, like, the company's like, I don't care. Like, what do I know about that? You could be lying to me. What does that make any difference to me, right? But I think what you did right there, obviously, was that you just served them, right? You just realized that, like, hey, these are what your needs are. And if I want to be a player with you, I'm going to have to sort of serve your clients' needs, essentially, to get you guys out there. Now, obviously, maybe you can talk a little bit about how this is going to really benefit your composers, because before you were mostly just completely independent. You had quite a few, I think, sub-publishers around the world. But what does going into this door with BMG do for the composers on your roster?
Yeah, and that's probably the that's probably the biggest thing for me, because obviously I want GID to pay my bills and do all that kind of stuff, right? Maybe not buy me a big car. I'm not really a car guy, but I want GID to be successful for me and my family. But I spent a lot of time in this industry watching very talented people make no money, stress out, frustrated for years. And it bothered me. It really bothered me because I remember, being around companies and seeing other companies where it was just like all of it was hitting the top, all the money was hitting the top and never coming down. And it really bothered me because I was like, man, like these people are talented. Like they are and I really had like a lot of belief and stuff into like so many of these people who just are great rappers, great singers, great producers, and so it bothered me. So when I created GID, once we kind of shifted into this like library kind of thing that we are now, one of my goals was to make sure that so much of the money does trickle down. And so as I was, the first year and a half or so of GID, collecting music, pitching music, and all that kind of stuff, I came to this realization that like there's only so much one person can do in the form of getting other people's music placed, right? I was somebody who I was emailing TV shows and sending briefs out to clients and asking for briefs from clients and doing all this stuff. And there's only so much of that I could do as one person who's also building a library and stuff. I'd allocate a section of my day to do that. And so there's only so much. So ultimately I started feeling guilty. I was like, I have so much of these people's music. There's so many places it could end up. I'm only really able to land it in certain places, really small, like little doorways and stuff. And so ultimately that was kind of the thought was I have an obligation to get their music to as much as it possibly can. And so going with a company like BMG, and there are others just like BMG, big conglomerate seems like a scary word, but it's not really. But it's big, like having a team of salespeople and a team of this, and like all of these types of teams really working on your music instead of one guy. And as much as I believe in their music and as much like motivation as I have, time and energy is finite. So getting it into the hands of a client that has a sales team and has relationships and has all this stuff already set up became a goal of mine because I, partially because I want it to, because it's my company, but also because I want to be able to send money to people and be like, hey, your hard work has paid off. And it's been a goal and it's starting already to happen. It's actually pretty cool. I love getting to PayPal people, their portion of whatever. And, and that became a really big motivation. And so when discussing with BMG, what they would be doing and where they would be doing it, what countries and all that kind of stuff and their types of clients, it just kept falling in place where it was just like, what, all this music has a home now that I was having a hard time, because there'd be some albums where I'm like, you can easily pitch this to the show and I bet you something will land. And then there's other albums like I have no relationships in that world. So I have a lot of work to do. So the fact that BMG essentially was basically going to be able to plug and play our music in all these different places, it was just kind of like, this makes sense for us. This makes sense for our composers, present and future composers as well. It just makes sense for everybody that we set up this scenario where our catalog gets pieced into the proper places and everybody gets to win. And then I can really focus too, instead of spending, cut out time to try and pitch and do sales and do all that fun stuff. I can really focus on just creating a good product for everybody so that the clients now are already there and we just need to get the music to them and have it at high quality and all that stuff. So so for the composers and stuff, it's more doors, instead of me trying to open doors one at a time, there's a whole team that is now doing it. And I think it's great for everybody.
Totally, man. It's a beautiful thing. I have that with my career. I have my music in catalogs and companies all over the world. And I don't even know the names of the people that are pitching my music, but I thank all of them every single day because it's so cool that I get to just focus on what I want to do and let them do exactly what you said and get me into all these different opportunities that how am I going to get a placement over in Japan? I have no idea how to do that, right? I have no contacts. I don't have any interest in flying over there and making phone calls and speaking Japanese or getting a translator. So it's just like, it's so great to have an international company like that really be, an advocate for your catalog and for your writers. So that's really cool. So let's talk about maybe some of the things in the last 2.5 years that you would go back and maybe not do, any big mistakes that kind of jump out to you that you would say, maybe I'd take that one back.
Yeah, so I think we chatted about this in one of our, you, me, and Mike. The idea of like nothing is a mistake, or nothing is something because there's so many good things to learn from failure. So there are things I would definitely be like, maybe I wouldn't do that, but I wanted to start out by saying all of it I would never go back and try to redo, because there's so many different things that are like, even though I failed miserably at a few things throughout this way, I would never not want to do that, because the learning from it, getting a little bit of humility, like all the stuff that comes from failing is really important. um, but man, there's been a few things, like some things I put some money in that just didn't pan out, some like graphic artists that seemed, cool, but then like the red flags were there, but I didn't want to be too rude, and then it all went, that money's gone and he's gone and all that stuff. And so some of that stuff, but one of the big ones that sticks out is I was trying to really stick myself into an area that I really didn't know anything about. And I ran an Instagram rap contest because I needed to try and find talent, and I was like, oh, I need some rappers and singers and stuff. So I'm going to run a contest on Instagram, and all these people are going to show up and all this stuff. And so I like paid for ads, did a little cool graphic thing. And I think I think after like doing a ton of ads, and I even paid a couple like influencer accounts to like post on their thing and all that stuff. And I tried all that out, spent some time and money doing it. And I think I got like 2 submissions. And I was like, oh man,
Ouch.
that was, yeah. And it was really, it was cool, and it was fun learning experience. But at the same time, it was like, man, I could have spent all that time doing something better, I guess. But anyway, though, it was a good kind of like, okay, I learned from that. Other people do it. It's definitely me, not the thing, because I know other people do it just fine and are really good at it. I just really mess. So that is one of the things. There's a few other smaller things like similar, trying to open up like little side stores and stuff like that. And it really just wasn't panning out. So, yeah, stuff like that. But like I said, it's hard for me to really be too mad at it, because it's so much of like I'm that type of person who looks at it and goes, all right, what can I learn from this, and then keep going. So
That's great, man. Yeah, you never lose, you just learn, right? Even if something doesn't work out, it's like I didn't lose from that. I actually got to learn something. So, and I think it's always good to try. Like I try to do that too with like sync my music with like new types of videos or new types of courses. Like always just try something new, because you really never know what's really going to work. And so I think even especially with libraries, it's always a good idea to not just get so rigid on like, all right, this has been our money maker, we're just going to do that. Just once in a while, kind of like dip your toe into something unknown, and because you never really know. And it's like it didn't probably cost you that much, right? Not that much time. Of course, it's disappointing. You had these other expectations, but at least you dipped your toe into it. And now, if you do need to do something with social media down the road, you're going to take all those lessons and apply them to whatever you need to do in the future. So yeah, you don't lose with those kind of experiments. Essentially, is what you're doing, right? And awesome. And then what do you see coming next for GID? What do you guys got in the pipeline? What's the plan moving forward now that you have this kind of really big, solid foundation of distribution under your belt?
yeah, something that I've learned with with GID and just in general and in life is because GID we've been doing pretty well, but we're not really like, and everybody in TV and film, if you've received royalties, you receive any kind of money, that you're getting paid for like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So GID is still kind of on the like we're chasing the potential money for the future. And so one of the things that I've realized that is potentially just as important as money when building a company is leverage and perception and like all these types of things. And so it's kind of an exciting question for me to think about what's in the future for GID, because I'm not just looking at it as like should we start selling GID t-shirts, because that's what it's more like what GID is, what does that get to leverage for the future? So GID has a pretty good social presence. GID's, with BMG now, GID's got some placements. We're doing this. So I have all this stuff to leverage to then pull into whatever we do next, which I don't have an exact answer yet, because we have a few things that we're trying to figure out. But growth is mostly what is kind of the idea, is growth that makes sense, taking what GID has built over the last 2 years, as far as all of that stuff, right? Presence, influence, all that stuff, the placements, all that fun stuff. And what can that propel, whether it's more library stuff, a new library, a new this, a new division that does blank, or new division in music. We're looking into working with, major artists and seeing how we can try and open that door. It's one that in my career anyway, I've really disliked that area and have really had a hard time in that area, and potentially going down that road kind of gives me a little bit of fear, but also a little bit of like, well, I'm in a different position now. Maybe we do as a company. There's other, going after, direct, advertising. There's so many different kind of alleyways now that that we're testing out and trying to figure out what makes the most sense as far as where GID is today, what the next step should be. I know that we're really like one of the first steps we're going to be taking is building a trailer, a movie trailer kind of a division, which is kind of a very one step over to the side kind of thing. So it's an easy kind of transition. It's not like a crazy new thing. That's one of the steps that I know for sure we're doing, as well as some other artist, and then maybe even a blend of artist and TV and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot going down. We just haven't figured out exactly what makes the most sense, because I don't want to take people down a path that maybe just will fail for them because I'm being a little too ambitious or being a little too like blinded by my excitement, as opposed to looking at what GID is and what makes, what steps are what steps are best to take next, because it's a step thing. I don't want to try and jump up 4 steps when I can take 2 or 3 to get to that 4th one, so that's kind of the next is making sure the BMG stuff and everything we're doing is solid, continuing that, because that's, a big deal. And then taking that and going, okay, what's next? And we're going to do whatever that is. So.
Awesome, man. Yeah, the image that comes to my mind with your situation is that for the last 2.5 years, you've been like putting your roots down into the ground, and now that you have a solid foundation with this BMG distribution deal, it's like you're starting to come up now, right? So now you can only go up. There's only like blossoming and kind of going, like you said, like growth, which is a great word for it. So it's really cool that but it took time. It took you a long time to get to this point, and that's why a lot of people do not do well in this industry, because they don't want to give 2.5 years to really build a solid foundation for a company that could be paying dividends for decades into your life, into all the composers' lives that are a part of it. So it is tricky, but it absolutely is rewarding. It's one of those things actually we're talking about in some of our newer Sync Psychology videos we're about to release in Sync Academy, which is that something that's challenging is by default rewarding once you get through it. So it's like when there's a challenge in front of us, a lot of people don't want to jump on board because it's like, well, I wanted something easy. Well, if it's going to be easy, it's not going to be very rewarding. You're not going to get the dividends. You're not going to really get the big payoffs down the road. So you kind of have to want to look for and really embrace these kind of challenges when they come your way. So it's really cool that you're doing that, man. So why don't we finish with some last minute maybe advice for composers that maybe want to work with GID or any other types of libraries that are kind of similar to your position in terms of you are fairly new, but you're getting your establishment, you're kind of getting your base here sort of like locked in. So any advice you can give for composers to really impress somebody like you if they wanted to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it a little bit at the beginning of because I get those emails, right? The let me tell you my life story emails. And then at the very bottom is like, can I send you some music? Which is always kind of I got to ask you for the music. I don't really like, so there's a little bit of like taking yourself out of the pitch and really just being like, how can I serve you? Like that's a really big, I think, hurdle, or not hurdle, but like thing that people should kind of pull away from is to focus on that part, and not so much the like, hey, I worked with this one artist one time, or I did this, or I did like in library. It's in a lot of ways, it's not very like credential based. It's just music based, and so it's like, just show me what you got, and so like I think that's a big one. And then some of the other stuff too, like really do your research and see who it is you're working with, like. And I know from experience, in the past, I'll have worked with somebody who I think, is going to pan out because I just kind of convinced myself, but I didn't really do the research. And so then I kind of put a bunch into something that I kind of blindly threw a bunch of music somewhere that I wasn't really, I didn't realize was not a good idea. And I should have, because I would have done the research and then been like, oh, this library, X, Y, and Z. And then also like really understand a library's strengths, maybe go to their social media and like look at the type of music that they get placed, what placements are they, shouting out on their website. Like that kind of stuff tells you the types of clients they have and what types of clients is really important. Like there's so many little things like that. Like what types of clients, the people that work there, are they even accessible? Do you even know their names? Like if you don't, and they really don't want you to know who they are, like that, there's reasons that may be good or bad, but know that and know why. And really like, it's mostly just the research. And for me, I'm pretty easy. I know some libraries are much less accessible than I am, but I'm pretty accessible. I'm down to take a listen. And like I said before, just keep it short and simple, something for me anyway. And I think I know a lot of libraries are this way, as well as some others are a little more like, you're not in unless you're in the club kind of thing. But yeah, for a lot of libraries that I know of anyway, they're open to hear it. You just maybe don't waste a lot of their time talking about yourself or kind of doing a bunch of stuff, and just really be like, hey, check it out. I'm pretty good. I can do, and your listeners already know this, because I almost, I was telling Jesse the other day, I could almost tell when an email comes in from somebody who listens to Jesse, because they hit some of those key points that Jesse talks about all the time. And then you've got others who are just like, here's my life story and then all this other stuff. And so, but yeah, I mean, as composers, like, just do some of the research and then reach out reach out how you would want to be reached out to in a lot of ways. Like, if you as a person, do you want to hear 10 life stories in a day? Like, do you got that kind of time? So think in that way too. Try to understand that there are people too that have time and all that stuff. But yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Awesome. Yeah. Having empathy for their time for sure, man. Some of my favorite text messages that you send me are the screenshots of some of the most ridiculous pitches you get. I mean, you guys wouldn't believe some of the ways that people come across to Trevor, like, yo, I got tracks. You need to license my music. And I know Trevor just sits there going, oh my gosh, I didn't know I needed this. Thank you so much for letting me know. This is what I need to do today. So it's just crazy. Like, I don't know. Unfortunately, I've noticed this obviously just because I've been in this sort of like educational business for, 3-4 years now. Artists and producers, we're just really typically bad at this stuff. And it's probably because a lot of artists and producers are not exposed to business thinking. I think that's really what a lot of this comes down to, is a lot of producers and musicians have been so self-absorbed in their art for so long, and just having these visions of like, my music will get out there and it's going to be great and people are going to love me and I'm going to have all these fans, and it's kind of all inwardly focused, that we're not really trained in terms of like, how do you get a client? Like, if you were just an independent contractor, how do you just go get a client? Now, some are, and I think literally that mindset alone is what's allowing some producers to really do well in this business, and it's keeping a lot of producers on the sidelines, is because they can't just change. They just are not able yet. They will, hopefully, just change that mindset. It's not about you, really. You kind of are like not the main star of the show here. It's really about making somebody else's life better and easier. And then the more that you can kind of like mute yourself and quiet your ego and quiet your needs as much as you can, and really kind of get into the empathetic zone to go like, what's somebody like Trevor going through, and like, what would really make his day if I sent him an email. Should I send him one song that's ready to go, or should I give him a full album ready to go and he can take it exclusively and I really want to work with him? Like, think about what he's going to perceive and how he's going to react to an email like that. That's just something that a lot of producers and musicians are just not born with, and we didn't really necessarily, I don't think anybody's necessarily born with, but we weren't trained that way, I think, as producers and musicians. So that's one of the big challenges that I have as an educator, is trying to get a lot of you guys out of that sort of like narcissistic me thinking and into looking outwardly and how you can serve somebody. And the more you do that, just like what Trevor's doing, you can see the pattern repeating. Trevor is, now a library owner, but just look at how he did what he did, is he's serving the needs of BMG and now his distribution partners that he's partnered with. And that's how he's getting to where he is. So this is going to be a common theme that is going to follow you around the rest of your life, whether or not you stay in sync licensing or not. It's just going to be something that just continuously haunts you. So you might as well just embrace it now if you want to be wealthy, if you want to be successful, and if you want to be seen as valuable by the people that you work with. So with that said, Trevor, thanks so much for your time today. Again, congrats. I know this is a long time coming, man. I do appreciate you sharing your story today.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, guys. I hope you guys learned something, and now maybe some of you guys that were thinking about starting your library, you might now realize it might be a lot more work than you had anticipated. But if you're up for the challenge, I wish you all the best, and jump into it well knowing now the kind of work and the kind of effort and maybe the timeline it's going to take to get yourself to a position to do something like what Trevor's doing. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment below with any questions or concerns or issues that you might have that we didn't address in this video. Thank you so much.